Here we go.
Tune into the Kate Dalley Show. Once you're awake, it's hard to go back to sheep. The Kate Dalley Show starts now.
We'll have a deal by Wednesday when the ceasefire ends. Will you extend the ceasefire or will you start attacks again?
Maybe I won't extend it. Okay. But the blockade is going to remain. But maybe I won't extend it. So you have a blockade, and unfortunately we'll have to start dropping bombs again.
Well, that was President Trump. Maybe we'll start to drop bombs again. And welcome to the Kate Dalley Show. I'm so glad that you're tuned in today. I have a great guest for you. We're going to be talking a little bit about the obvious things, the war, the the economy, you name it. I have Mel Mattison on tap today, which is always, it's always fun when Mel's in town. So Mel is in our neighborhood today, and as far as that goes online, and I just am grateful that you're with me today, Mel. Mel Mattison has the book Quaz. Go get it. It talks about what we're going through right now, and it's very prolific when he wrote it. So welcome to the show, Mel Mattison. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Kate.
You got it. All right. So I want to read you some of the headlines, Mel. Okay. And I just want your instant reaction. Okay. And I'll give you my instant reaction too. Okay. Here we go. Iran warns issues dire warning over U.S. blockade as talk remains in limbo.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we blockaded it after trying to force it open for 6 weeks in a row. So, I mean, my initial reaction is just its absurdity. It's bizarro world. And I'll tell you, the only way it makes sense to me is Trump wanted to lift the blockade. He wanted the Strait open. And Israel said, no, we don't want this war to end. We're not finished in Lebanon. And somebody got word to Trump, sabotage the negotiations. We know Vance was calling Bibi Netanyahu from Islamabad last week. We know that Trump on Friday morning last week said he's opening up the Strait. The Iran foreign minister said they're opening up the Strait. Everything was hunky-dory. The market is going up. And then all of a sudden, and one can only imagine, whether it's Mossad, sending Trump text messages of Epstein file clips he doesn't want released, or what happened, and a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. President Trump, no, we don't want the Strait open. Put up the blockade. And so we had the peace talks collapse and the blockade go up, which makes no sense for the United States.
Which leads me.
It does for Israel, though. It makes a lot of sense for Israel.
Which leads me to my next headline. Trump, I expect to be bombing Iran if no deal reached before ceasefire ends. POTUS says Israel didn't talk him into war.
Yeah, he's going to say that. He's going to say that until he's blue in the face.
I saw that. It was just funny.
It's ridiculous. I mean, you can't even justify it anymore. Okay, it's a joke. It's a clown show. He's full of lies. He tweets out one thing, and then a half an hour later he tweets out the opposite. He talks about sending pictures of him acting as Christ, and then tries to claim, oh, he just thought he was a physician. I mean, this man, I think he is a little cuckoo. I think I didn't believe it. Like when we went through this whole thing with Joe Biden, me and you were talking during Joe Biden, and we watched it. And I said, I can't believe that these Democrats are watching this guy who has clearly lost his mind, who's clearly incompetent, and they're trying to act like he's sharp as a tack. And I can't believe these Republican apologists who go on Fox News and try to act like this man is making sense. He did not think he was a physician. He knew darn well what he looked like in that picture. This man just lies. He lies. He has no idea what he's doing. He has gotten us into a huge mess. And now he's going around trying to say that it's a big victory when we have lost billions of dollars in aircraft, over a dozen servicemen. The Strait of Hormuz is closed when it was open. We have oil and gas prices through the roof, even after they've come down from the highs they set last week. We have flights in Australia, Singapore, all over Asia getting canceled. We have flights in LA now getting canceled from our international partners. We have Japanese companies that are shutting down manufacturing lines because they can't produce plastics. We have all of this going on. And yes, we have the stock market at all-time highs because we have such a messed up financial system that there's nowhere for money to go except for in the stock market. And that's what's happening. That's not a sign that the economy is doing well or the war is going well. That is a sign of too much liquidity in the system, too much cash, too much money printing. It has to go somewhere. Eventually the sellers get exhausted. There's nobody else left to sell. And then the 401ks, everybody's paycheck, it just keeps plugging in there, the billions of dollars. It's the Energizer bunny. And the money just keeps going in and in and in. And that's why the market goes up. Meanwhile, it's going down in terms of inflation adjusted terms, but it looks good in the headlines. And it's just that stock market. I'm promising you this, Kate, we'd have 8,000 at the S&P. We'd have 55,000 on the Dow right now if he had not gone into Iran. That's costing us at least 5 or 10% off of everybody's 401ks.
Okay. Now I look at it a little differently. I look at it as no matter which president we're talking about, it's all direction. I think it has very little to do with them. I actually think this is not. I don't think it's as much him as it is the direction he's told to take by the deep state, because they want us bickering over Trump and over Biden and over Obama. And I think it's all a show. But okay, so that leads me to the next headline. IDF validates photo of soldiers sledgehammering effigy of Jesus Christ. Outrage continues. Now, I saw this headline and I was like, I felt like the headline should read, if we were being honest, now be emotional. They're hitting Jesus Christ. It's like, look, I'm a Christian. I believe in Christ. That's the only way I get through all this. But let me just tell you, I know when I'm being manipulated by headlines, and this is a manipulation clearly of a headline. I actually don't know if this really actually happened. I think this is more about getting to the emotional heartstrings of Christians so that Christians back what's happening. That's what I think. What is your comment on this headline?
Well, I think a lot of the religious manipulation is in very full force in this whole conflict. The Zionist cause is really manipulated in full force. There's a lot of well-intentioned Christians who have looked at certain scripture verses that talk about protecting and doing things for Israel. And then they automatically equate that with, well, we owe as Christians a certain allegiance to Israel. But there's actually a lot deeper stuff in there. It's very clear that land was promised to Israel, to the Jews, only if they fulfilled and lived within God's commandments. And it talked about God vomiting, was the term used, the Jews from that land if they did not adhere. It doesn't seem like they're adhering to those commandments to me right now. So I think what's happening is they're manipulating people to say, you need to stand up for Israel. Israel is our ally. We need to sacrifice American interests for Israeli interests. We're putting Israeli puppets like Witkoff and Kushner in to negotiate on behalf of the United States. And then you have J.D. Vance, who's a Christian, who, when he was first nominated, I remember us talking, we did a whole show about him, his connections to Peter Thiel, how he's been a puppet. Well, who is Peter Thiel the chairman of? He's the chairman of Palantir, one of the largest defense software companies, which is run by Alex Karp, and Stephen Cohen is the president, to Max Zionist. So you just have this entire circle, whether it's Kushner, it's Witkoff, it's the top chiefs at Palantir, it's the chiefs at these top tech firms, whether it's a Zuckerberg or a Andy Jassy at Amazon, or the list can go on and on and on and on. And then he's nominating Kevin Warsh to be the Fed chair, whose stepfather is the Estee Lauder heir and the president of the World Jewish Congress, which is under the auspices, as we've talked about before, of, I believe it's Walter or David de Rothschild.
Yeah.
That these are the people that surround him in Mar-a-Lago, which they call that area Jew heaven. And he literally is surrounded by the Israeli Zionist core elite people. They pushing the United States down this path. And the American people are starting to wake up to it. Do you know that right now, the majority of Americans under 40 years old are in favor of a one-state solution, and that state is Palestine? In other words, there's no longer support for the state of Israel to even exist by Americans under 40. The country and the people that are getting hurt most by this war are the Israelis. And they are the ones that are losing all American support. The whole charade is over. The AIPAC charade is ending. The whole thing about, oh, you have to support Israel or you can never get elected, it's going to be disproven in these midterms. Mark my words. We will start to see people elected to Congress who openly are anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian, who believe that Gaza is a genocide, Israel is an apartheid state, and that we have Israeli agents in the White House.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with that. I actually think it was by design. I think that they wanted this outcome. I think that this was heavily directed to be this way. And if you look at the Zionist project from the 1940s, you see that that we would be demonized for our role in the land grab that's going on in the Middle East. So very interesting, very interesting. So that leads me to the next one, next headline. JD Vance remains at White House as uncertainty surrounds whether he will depart for Pakistan. By the way, no one's had a role this big in the vice presidency ever. I'm just saying, like, they've never highlighted somebody, talked about somebody so much, grabbed so many headlines for the vice president and so much power than for JD Vance. So I'm seeing a setup here for JD Vance to go into the presidency.
But he did not have any power. He went to Islamabad. He said he called Trump at least 6 to 12 times. Bibi Netanyahu said he was getting reports, meaning our vice president was reporting to Bibi as if he was a subordinate. And the Israeli foreign ministers came there with a plan. They came there with the power and authority to negotiate, which JD Vance clearly did not have. Otherwise, he wouldn't have needed to call home to Washington and Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So he's being put up like he has some power. But I honestly think, like you said, these are just the show creatures, whether it's Donald Trump or JD Vance. This is part of this. It's not even really necessarily just the deep state, because I think there are a number of people in the deep state who are upset about this as well, because they knew before this whole debacle happened that it was going to be a disaster. And that's why they never went into Iran under George Bush. That's why they didn't do it under Obama. That's why, because it always made sense. I mean, you can go in, if you can take over Iran, all of a sudden you get control over a large amount of oil that goes to China. It puts the Middle East basically under U.S. total protection, because we already have the Arab states, we have Israel. So it makes perfect strategic sense for the United States to want to essentially do a coup d'etat in Iran. The reason we never did it is because we knew we couldn't. We knew that there was no way to be successful. And so I think, I mean, this is very well documented, and I'm sure you're aware of it. The dozen plus meetings of Bibi Netanyahu with President Trump, the head of Mossad staying at Blair House in Washington, D.C., a place normally only reserved for other heads of state, meeting with Donald Trump. And so I think, Joe Kent resigning, explicitly stating he felt that this was the president being bullied into this by Mossad and Bibi Netanyahu. And I just don't think it's anything shocking or, out there to say. I think it's pretty much the accepted narrative right now that this was a dumb idea and that Trump was essentially talked into it by Bibi and Mossad.
Yeah. There's a definite effort, today's headlines are all about him having the same approval rating as Jimmy Carter, and of course it's 32%, which they manipulate all those numbers, but it's 32%, and it's all about Trump, and it's all about a low favorability. Okay. And I think it's a huge manipulation attempt. I think that people, I think this is by design, and each move that he's making, whether he can't make up his mind in a sentence, whether we're bombing or not, or whatever, I think that is by design. I think that if we really take a look at the presidencies, like we've been saying, for like show after show after show, that this is, once you finally see it, you can't unsee it, because then you look at the headlines as these manipulation ploys, these little things designed to kind of get you into a state of thinking a certain way, or having every emotion be brought to the table of the administration, rather than the deep state that's actually ordering these things. The other one was this, and I thought this was interesting, and because you're on for the economy as well, I wanted to get your take on this. Solomon says U.S. recession risk could be one tweet away. One tweet away. Recession risks could rise suddenly depending on how Trump reacts to the Iran war on social media. Goldman Sachs CEO said, that's Solomon, right? And so so one tweet away. So his tweets are so powerful that we are going to either get a recession or not based on his sole reaction. So I wanted
Yeah, well, I don't agree with that. I mean, I think the market has gotten to a point where whatever he tweets is getting less and less importance.
Yeah.
I think the market needs to see actions, and the market needs to see right now. They need to see JD Vance getting on a plane and going to Islamabad, and the market started going down pretty quickly right before we got on the air here, and I think it's because they're starting to read the tea leaves, which is that. While I believe President Trump wants this to be over, I believe, as I said earlier, he wanted it to be over on Friday. I think he got a call. I think he got a call from Mossad, and I don't think that it is too far out there to suggest that Mossad or Israel have something over him. I think even Joe Kent, and this was a guy who was the highest counterintelligence officer, the number 2 in the Department of National Intelligence, on Tucker Carlson, said he was worried that part of the reason why the decision to go into Iran was made was that there is a blackmail force in effect that Israel has over Donald Trump. And when I look at his decisions and I look at how he changes course 180 degrees so quickly, the only way that makes sense is that he makes a decision. Okay, I want the Strait open last Friday. I'm tweeting it's open. And then all of a sudden, oh, no. I'm keeping the blockade up. It's closed. Why is he doing that? Why is he changing his mind so quickly and in a way that goes against United States interests and what appears to be his interest at this point, which is he wants this to be over? And the only way that I can get to it is that somebody is pulling his strings. And to me, the only person who benefits from the way he's been changing his mind is Israel. And so I am genuinely concerned that we have a compromised president who has basically that Israel has something that they're able to blackmail him with.
Okay. I think they're all compromised. I think the entire presidencies, the entire administrations going all the way back completely compromised.
Well, that's a good point. I would not agree that Joe Biden did not have people who could pull his strings.
Well, he was. I don't think he was ever running the country.
That's absolutely true as well. But I do think, and I mean, look, this is something that goes back a long time. I mean, you mentioned earlier going back to the 40s. I mean, you can go back to 1917. This is when there was a letter written to a Rothschild from Balfour, a member of British Parliament, the famous Balfour Declaration, which essentially said that the British government was in favor of turning Palestine into a homeland for the Jews. Now, why did that happen in 1917? It happened because of the Jewish lobby in Britain at the time, who was threatening to essentially pull the plug on Britain's World War I funding. So this is where you have the banking class pulling the strings of a government. Now, this is well documented that along with threatening to pull loans and funding, they also claimed, falsely, it was later shown, but these are in internal documents that various Jewish lobbyists made to British Parliament in 1917, that Germany, the foe in World War I, was getting ready to recognize Palestine as a Israeli Jewish state. And that if Britain did not do the Balfour Declaration, that world Jewry, including large banking houses, were going to go onto the side of Germany. So this is something that has been going on for now 109 years of incredibly rich and powerful Jews lobbying, whether it be British or United States policymakers, to essentially make decisions that are not in the best interests of Great Britain or the United States, but because they hold the strings. In World War I case, we were talking about the purse strings, but now we're talking about perhaps blackmail, and then there's the purse strings still clearly exist. The donors, the banks, the Edelsteins, the big money in politics and the PACs. So all of these things continue. This has not changed for over 100 years. And I think what has changed is you were never allowed to say it because every single TV network was owned by a Zionist who would forbid anyone from saying anything remotely close to what I've been saying since we started talking.
The question is, because I was warned back when I started radio 16 years ago. I was warned. You don't mention these things, but why the change, why the shift now is a question we all should be asking. But let's take a quick caller. Hi, caller. Welcome to the show. Go right ahead.
Hi there.
Hi.
I just want to say that it's not as if Trump is being blackmailed and that's why he's doing what he's doing. When you get into these positions of power.
How do you know that? How do you know that he's not being blackmailed? I didn't say he was. I said he might be. How do you know he's not?
How do you know he's not being blackmailed?
My suggestion is that when you enter into a deal with these people, it's part of the contract. You know that they have dirt on you. That's the only way they would enter into this agreement. It's their collateral over you. Do you understand?
Okay.
So I know it's blackmail, but he goes into this position like all these guys do with that blackmail embedded into the position. It's their collateral. So
I can agree with that. It's like the dirty cop. You don't trust a cop who doesn't take money. He's never even going to get into this position unless these people have something. I'm with you on that he knew this going in. Yeah.
Yes.
All
That's
right.
all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Appreciate the call.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm with you on that. I'm not saying like they pulled something out of a bag that Trump was not aware of. Probably going back 2015 when he came down the escalator. And to your point, Kate, that this is, they all have it, all the presidents, at least in modern times. I mean, maybe there were people back in the day before, all of these kind of networks of intelligence agencies and everything had kind of infiltrated. But now they do that. The second you even start sniffing near the presidency, Mossad is going to have agents on top of you. This is the way the game is played. So if you're even probably in the top 15 right now of a 2028 presidential candidate, there's probably a team at Mossad right now who is either trying to get you in a honeypot, a sexual compromise. This is unfortunately the world we live in. And so I would agree with the caller completely that this is the collateral that these people come into the office with. and it's just a sad state of affairs. But I think it's not worth not stating it. Even if most of us understand it, I think it's still important to call it out, because it's a very sad situation. And you asked about, like, why now can people say this? I think a lot of it is because there's not 3 channels anymore. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, you remember this. I'm old enough to remember this. You didn't have cable. You had an antenna, and you had ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, maybe a local channel. Maybe in Chicago we had WGN. In Atlanta you had 5 or 6 channels,
right?
And that controlled the media. And now you have millions of channels on YouTube, on Rumble, on Twitter, on various platforms.
Right.
And so I think that's why it's technology. I mean, the reason why people are allowed to say it is because you just can't shut people up anymore, because they tried to do it during COVID. Elon, for all his faults, at least he did, by buying Twitter, provide a platform that allowed for a greater spectrum of speech. And I think what people realize, especially Google, who owns YouTube, is they took so many people off during COVID for BS reasons, like saying maybe the vaccine came from Wuhan, which is now the accepted truth, and people were, had their whole channels and livelihoods taken away from them, that they're now a little hesitant to pull people off the air. And I also think that the Jewish control does not exist in Silicon Valley as much as it did in the old school East Coast type of companies like NBC and ABC. So don't get me wrong. Obviously, you got Meta, run by Mark Zuckerberg. But when you look at a company like Google, founded by 2 Eastern European immigrants, run by Hindu immigrant, it's just not the same thing as it was when you had essentially the boys club in Manhattan, all the big offices. And I think that's why the truth is finally getting out. Or the truth was always out, but now the truth can be talked about on platforms and on programs.
Because two narratives, heavy narratives, have flipped. Number one, it's all of a sudden now in America, you can talk about Israel, and the main hosts that host shows are talking about Israel in a negative way. That's very interesting. The other one is all of a sudden in 2017, we got a whole lot of government now flipping the table on UFOs, and now they were hiding stuff as before they were saying it didn't exist, and now they were saying it did exist. And so I've been watching these two narratives, because you have to ask yourself, why would they flip on these two things? These two things were, very important to them. So why now? So are they using them for a certain reason? And if you look at the Zionist plan, then it would be to demonize us along with Israel around the world, right? For a takeover. It would also, so I can see that they would allow people to then start saying those things. And I'm not saying they're not true. I'm just saying that they would allow for it more in the press, right? And then with UFOs, I still don't believe in UFOs, little green men, but I'll tell you, it's very interesting to watch them flip on that. And then also, is it to use it later on, like in Project Bluebeam? So I'm always looking at why all of a sudden a total 180 on these things. And by the way, when I started radio, I was told that if I talked about Israel, if I critiqued it, okay, if I didn't just talk it up, if I critiqued it, I would be off the air in 2 seconds, because at the helm, all media is controlled by your deep state in Israel. All media is owned and controlled. So that's kind of interesting. And then now it has flipped. And now but it's not just with the people. Now it's with the hosts. Now you're seeing Tucker. You're seeing a bunch of people start to kind of hit on it and say things, which is very, very interesting. I always take a look at why. You've got to look at why.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important. And you always are questioning it and going, one layer deeper than most people do, and saying, is there a reason? Is this a narrative they want us to circulate? Is there something? And I think, if I was to speculate on why would they want that is it could be that there was a very large, what they called an Arab wing in the State Department. A lot of these things were gutted in the 70s, in the 80s. And there might have been a period where there was a very high Jewish Zionist infiltration of the U.S. State Department. That may be dying. And if that is, then the Christian deep state may be, in a sense, at war with the Zionist Jewish deep state.
Interesting.
In the sense that what it is that in the past, they were, you have my back, I have your back. And that there are certain elements within the deep state who are saying, look, this has gotten out of hand. Even Trump in his recent post said to Netanyahu, enough is enough in regards to the carpet bombing of Beirut after the alleged ceasefire was declared. So it could be that there's an element of the deep state in the United States that has had enough, where these Zionists have just gotten way out of hand. And even they are saying, hey guys, you need to slow your roll. You've gotten us into a disastrous war. And we're now going to unleash a propaganda war against Israel because you guys have basically gone across the line.
Interesting. Okay. I do think that there's usually always a reason, that there's always a bigger reason, right? There's always some destination point for this. And when I saw the hosts turning, you have a significant amount of trusted hosts on our right, which I'm a part, I'm on the right? On the right, going against Trump, going against MAGA, going against Israel. Very interesting when the hosts do it, because I think the hosts are very controlled. So what's the end game? And I would love for people to weigh in on this, because there is an end game. What is the end game then?
Well, I would just say really quickly, I've always been a relative fan of Donald Trump. The reason why I turned against this policy is because I think it's a bad policy.
Yeah.
So when he does things that are brash and not popular, maybe even not in accordance with international law, like the foray into Venezuela, I call no harm, no foul. Delcy Rodriguez is better than Maduro. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
When he does something that demonstrably harms the United States and global economy, and that goes against American interests and leads to Americans, even if it's only 13, coming home in body bags, that's why I go against them.
Okay. And I'm not, this is the thing. When I said Trump would go in, when they would put Trump in, that's a bigger statement than just, is he going to win? When I said they would put Trump in again, I knew it was going to be for specific reasons. And I knew that one of them was going to be attached to Israel and to a land grab. I thought and war. And I thought one of them was going to be attached to the digital ID. Going forward, right? And we land in smart cities and kind of the future of what they have planned and what they're doing right now to America right now. And that he would be part of that process, because we would be made complacent in order to accept it. And a lot of conservatives had a problem with me saying that. They really did. They didn't want to believe that. And it was all the way MAGA, and it was all the way forward. So when you see certain hosts going up against Trump, generally, not just for policy, like you said, but just generally, what is your take? What do you think that is?
Just generally?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously on the left, they've always been that way. They've been that way from the beginning.
Yeah.
I think.
I mean, on the right.
On the right, why would they all of a sudden be going against him?
Yeah, it's very interesting.
I mean, I would argue that he's always been a threat to the deep state, and that I honestly think he was bamboozled into this or blackmailed through some explicit blackmail, like totally like, we have this, we have this, you do this or else. Or he was cajoled through flattery and just a constant drumbeat of Bibi Netanyahu and the head of Mossad, El Benzir, however you say his name, basically saying, look, we can do this. It'll be Venezuela 2.0. It'll be in and out. You're going to be looked at as a foreign policy genius. Look at those protests. This regime is ready to crumble. We're gonna take out Khomeini. We're going to bomb the hell out of him for 2 or 3 days. The people are going to rush onto the streets. You remember that first announcement he made, like the night of the war? It was like, stay home. In 2 or 3 days, we'll let you know when it's safe to come and take your country. I think he honestly believed that. So Trump is not a very powerful person. Trump is a weak person. He's weak because he's very susceptible to his ego, to narcissism. And I think, I'm sure Mossad has a whole team of psychiatrists who analyzed him, who coached Bibi Netanyahu on exactly what to talk to him about when they have their one-on-one time in Mar-a-Lago. How do you get inside this guy's head? Get him to trust you, get him to believe you, and then manipulate him to carry out your plans. Trump is really someone who deep down wants adulation. If I was his age with his money, I would never in a million years do what he does. It just makes no sense to me. The court cases, the FBI raids, the assassination attempts.
Did you ever notice that nothing was ever said about that FBI raid? Like nothing ever happened because of that once he was in office, or the court cases just fizzled? Because I said they would 3 years ago. I go, the court cases are going to fizzle, and no one believed me at the time. But I said they're just going to fizzle and nothing will happen, and it will be as if the press never remembers it again. See, I don't think he was ever a threat to the deep state. I think he's as controlled as Obama and Biden. Do you?
So on the one hand, yes. On the other hand, I do think he has a streak in him, which is willing to go against it. But he needs to be corralled in, and he has to be corralled in a different way than probably Biden or Obama or George W. needed to be corralled. He needs to be corralled in such a way that he doesn't realize he's being corralled. I think maybe George W., when he was basically probably getting told what to do by Dick Cheney, like he kind of understood, growing up with his father being the head of the CIA and president of the United States. He probably understood like the way the game is played. Like you don't really get any more deep state than the Bush family. So the way that he was kind of controlled and put in place, I think it's a very different way with Trump. I think he is in some sense a tragic figure. I think he's someone who deep down wants to help people. I think that's why he has such a strong connection to so many Americans, because he has an authentic desire on the one hand. On the other hand, he has this whole other life. He has the backdoor deals. He has the crypto deals. We've seen a lot of shady business in the futures market and different, bets being placed on oil contracts and other things right before his Truth Social posts go out. So we know he has these shady dealings. He declared bankruptcy many times of his own companies, never personal bankruptcy, but he's constantly kind of been a showman. I'm going to build the greatest casino in Atlantic City, and he's going to raise all this money, and then it's basically going to go bankrupt. But he's going to get his share of money from it. So he's not really a good businessman. He is a showman. He's someone who loves adulation. And I think he's someone who is able to be manipulated by essentially sycophancy and flattery and other means. And I think that's basically what has been happening to him. And I don't think he's fully aware of it, but I think he's starting to be aware of it. And I honestly do think he's upset at Bibi Netanyahu. And I think he's upset at Pete Hegseth. I think Pete Hegseth will probably be fired by the end of the year because he was not told the truth. I don't think he was told what a disaster this was going to be, how Iran was going to be able to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, how they have missile silos buried under mountains that even nuclear bombs cannot destroy.
Right.
I don't think he was told that, but this was all very well known, before this war ever started. Anybody that had seriously studied the military attack on Iran
Mhm.
would have told you there's just not a good military solution for it. There's,
Right. Or why even go after them right now? Like, the timing is very weird. So there was no reason or cause, but I do feel that it is the deep state, I think, tells Trump how to react and what to do. I really do. I think that you have a team of people that are telling him what to do next. And if they want him to look this way, I think it's very possible that he does, because he will take orders. And like I said, in the first presidency, it was all about Russia. That was the big distraction for 3 years. And then easily forgotten once Dingling went in. And then once they put Dingling in. And then you have these years of Trump, and it's all about Trump. So it's all about who he really is and what he's really about. But I really do think that if you are in the presidency right now, you are, and you're leading a department, it's as if you have actors from Casting Central taking the roles, and they play good cop and bad cop, and they play fake fight, and they are all about making people believe that they have the power that they do. But I don't think they do. I don't think the presidency actually has any power. I think the deep state controls the moves, and the deep state wants war over there, and they'll do anything to get it, or to even make Trump feel like he's in charge of it, or to even make Trump feel like he's directing it, but he's not. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you can disagree. You can totally disagree.
I do disagree in that I actually think that there's probably two factions in the deep state right now. I think there's one faction that did not want this war, and then there's another faction that is in the pocketbooks of the Israeli Zionist lobby that does want this war. And I think that's why, like you said, we're starting to see dissent on the airwaves allowed, probably is because there are people. But I would agree. So I would disagree with you on the deep state being totally behind this war. I think part of it is actually not behind it. But I would agree with you that Trump is not really the shot caller. That he's manipulated, whether by various forces, are all trying to manipulate. I mean, it's like a Game of Thrones. It's like an old game of just a lot of forces behind the scenes trying to manipulate him. You have the Silicon Valley AI lobby trying to manipulate him one way. You have the blockchain crypto lobby trying to manipulate him another way. I think you have a deep state industrial base trying to manipulate him one way. Israeli lobby trying to manipulate him another. And he's being pulled in all these different directions. I think he still thinks somehow he's in charge. I think he has that type of egomaniacal personality that he doesn't realize he's being manipulated. But I think he might realize he was manipulated into this war. And I think we could see. I think that the truth will be in how he treats Israel when the dust settles from this, because I do think that this war needs to end. I think, despite the fact that Israel wants it to continue, I think that they're going to find a way to wind it down, even if it means allowing Iran to charge a toll, even if it means pulling U.S. troops out of bases in the Middle East. Because I think he knows that his entire presidency will be sunk if this turns into an Afghanistan or an Iraq. He will get shredded in the midterms. He will be looked at as somebody who was a puppet of Israel. He will be looked at as somebody who betrayed one of his biggest commitments, which was new foreign wars. Even throughout this whole war, he's always said it's going to be quick. Don't be a panikin. It's going to be short. So I think he's committed to wrapping this thing up, even though it's not easy to do. And Iran does not really want it to get wrapped up so quickly, because they've got, the United States and global powers stuck between a rock and a hard place, literally, in the Strait of Hormuz. So he's going to try to figure a way out of it. I'm just hoping he can, for the sake of the United States and for the sake of our troops. I'm hoping he can figure out a way to end this thing in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know. Do you think he'll be able to, or do you think
I think it'll linger because it's a great excuse for the economy. Go back to the headline by Goldman Sachs. Okay, one tweet away, and everything is gauged on a single response from our president on the economy, the total economy everywhere. And so they're really milking this as an excuse for the economy, and it's working because people are like, oh, our gas prices are high because of the Strait, not realizing we only get 10% of our oil from there, and Europe gets nothing from the Strait. So since 2020, so people aren't putting two and two together that it's kind of a sham show, and that things can be affected, but not like when they rushed out to raise the prices, because the oil that they raised prices on was bought a while ago. It had nothing to do with what we're seeing now. So I actually think it's a really good excuse to keep the economy high, even though we had promises of restoring the economy, and that people will buy it because it's all about Iran. See, Iran, the boogeyman. And I think we own Iran. I think we own that government. I think we dictate who's in. We dictated Khomeini going in. I've said this many times on the show, but we've always been over who runs Iran for a reason, so that we can utilize them as a bad guy when we want to. And I think we want to right now, because I think it's a really good excuse to keep this economy out of touch for people to actually be able to survive it, because it just keeps going up and up and up. I don't know. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think that's interesting. I tend not to think that we're in direct control, really, of Iran, or even indirect. I think that here's the thing. It gets very complicated, right? Because it's a layered cake. On the one hand, I could say there's more of a political, probably, control of Iran by China. And Russia. But then on the other hand, when we go back to the global financiers, the big money, that's global, and that has no borders, and that's behind all of it. So do I see your point that this is beneficial for certain global corporate interests and banking interests? I do. And one does think that we have gotten accustomed to having at least one or two wars running at all times.
Yes.
2001.
Makes a lot of money for the benefit.
Whenever one ends, another one seems to start. Right?
Yeah,
so Iraq kind of ends, and then Ukraine kind of starts.
Yep.
And Afghanistan ends, and now here we are with Iran.
Yeah.
So there is this propensity, whether you call it the military industrial complex, or it's also the banking complex. Bankers, we've talked about this before, the Rothschilds funding Napoleon, funding the British, manipulating the markets. So, I mean, I think that game is definitely going on, and that's another kind of chess game, even behind the political chess game. And so it's a multi-layered thing, in my view. It's not just like, oh, we control, like, it's more like there's different layers of it and different levels of it, and
you think
sometimes they overlap in different ways.
Yeah, I think there could be different factions, but I do think that if people really looked at the past and understood the one direction that we go in all the time, and got out of the personality issues of president to president to president, even Dingling, even Dingling Biden, who just ate ice cream in front of the camera and couldn't finish a sentence. If we realized how the characters are utilized, it's much easier, I think, and better to understand and see it from that point of view, because everything starts to make sense. So you go, well, this is being utilized. Because, 2 weeks ago, Dr. Pesta asked me, he said, we got a deadline tonight, it's 8:00, and asked me what I thought about the deadline. And I said, and everyone was thinking that Trump was going to do something at 8:00 that night. And I said, nothing will happen. It'll be more back and forth, because they're utilizing this for more than we think. And some of it's the economy, not all of it, but some of it. And there's lots of other reasons too. But I said, it'll be utilized, and it's being utilized. So it'll go on. I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. Do you? Do you really think it might end?
Well, to say end as in
like
everything is settled or back the way that it was before. No, I don't think that. But do I think we could start bringing some troops back? Not have as many ships out there, and there be essentially kind of a ceasefire, and maybe the occasional kerfuffle comes up.
Yeah.
I could see that, because if you can do that and you can keep oil, let's say, around or below $90 a barrel, you're not going to completely destroy the world economy. And I could see it continuing. If it ramps up to a much higher degree, like I could never imagine like a ground invasion. Like I can imagine continued hostilities in the region.
Right.
But I think there's going to have to be and there already is a decent amount of oil getting out of the strait. A lot of that tanker tracking data and everything else is not the true data. There are ships that are turning off their transponders and going through, and there's a black market for it. There's been research done by independent analysts that have gone to the region and actually out onto the water and seen ships going through that do not show up on the tanker traffic. Little diagrams that they love to show on TV. So there is a decent amount of oil and goods going in and out of the strait, even before the ceasefire. And in fact, if you notice, like there's been one ship that our blockade stopped, and that was a cargo ship. It wasn't a tanker, and it was a cargo ship going from China to Iran. So the United States Navy wanted to know what was on that ship. Perhaps it was weapons or armaments or different things. We're letting oil come out of the strait. Despite what they say about there being a blockade, I've seen no evidence that any oil tankers are being stopped. I haven't heard of any ships being stopped by the blockade. So they're letting oil come out. They're just acting as if they're not. So as long as they can keep the oil moving, and there is oil moving, that's why the stock market is not, tanking, because people started to realize, wait a minute, the strait is not really closed. It's closed in name, but it's actually still open. It's just not moving as much cargo and oil as it used to. So I think it could continue for some time, as long as it's not collapsing the economy. If it starts to collapse, unless you think they want, and you might believe this, they want to start an economy collapse to bring in the digital currency. I've said I think that the stable coin is their answer to the central bank digital currency. So I don't think that they really want necessarily a central bank digital currency. I think they do want people using the digital currency, the stable coins, and move us to a completely trackable, programmable money that they have a greater control over. So I don't think they necessarily need to collapse the economy in order to do that. I think it's already starting to happen.
But I do think they have to make the economy very difficult and keep making it more and more difficult, right? So I don't know. Because if you have a really great economy, how do you move people toward that?
Yeah, they never want to have a great economy. I will agree with that. You don't control the masses by having everybody being able to quit their jobs, like after COVID, where people were starting to quit jobs and demand the ability to work from home, and I'm leaving my job because somebody just offered me another job I do think that they hate to see that gives the people too much power. And so they like the people to be in a constant state of struggle. I would agree with that.
Yes. All right. And so 2 minutes on the economy. So let me just people investing, any advice there, because you're so good at calling the economy out as far as gold, silver, and where we're headed.
Yeah, I still think that these assets are going higher. Last time I was on, I said I thought the stock market was going to go lower. It did go lower after I was on. That was about a month ago. But around when it got to the bottom at the beginning of this month, it just seemed like, to me, in the stock market, all the people that had stuff to sell had sold. And there just was not this incremental seller. There weren't people that wanted to go in and say, okay, stock market's down 10%. Now I want to start selling. I think that the sellers dried up. And once that happened, we very quickly, one of the biggest rebounds in stock market history, going from down almost 10% to new record highs in a matter of days.
Mhm.
And I think that's going to continue. But as I've always said, in the long term and medium term, the stock market has been underperforming gold. And in real terms, it hasn't been giving you that great of a return because of inflation and how much things have been going up. And obviously things like CPI and the official inflation readings don't show the true cost of living struggles that people have. So I think we're going to see stock prices, go up into the summer. We might get a pullback here if hostilities resume and it goes down 3 or 4% and then it rebounds again. But I think that in the end, we're going to have a very good year for gold. I think it's been after such a run up, going from basically 2,000 to 5,600 in about 18 months. It's been digesting those gains. I think that's very normal. It's about 4,800 right now. Last time I was on, it was 5,200, so it's gone down a few hundred. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that's a long-term situation. I think there were certain central banks in the Middle East that needed to sell some of their gold. And again, as this situation, if it doesn't end, at least stabilizes, and the market kind of reacts and adjusts to it, then you're going to start to see gold resuming its upward climb. And I would see gold by 6,000 by the summer, the S&P near 8,000 by the summer. And I just think that people have to understand the economy is not the same thing as financial markets. And that's been a big disconnect over recent years. There's been a lot of people who have been calling for the stock market to collapse or gold to collapse. And it doesn't happen, even though the economy is not really getting better. It's getting worse. And so two things can happen at the same time. The stock market can go up and the economy can get worse at the same time. It doesn't make sense, but unfortunately that's the way it works, simply because of the money printing and the insatiable demand to buy stocks. I mean, every American, you get a job, they sign you up for a 401k, whether you want to or not. Now you're born, they give you a stock account, whether you need. That shows you, like BlackRock and Larry Fink, like they will not stop finding ways to almost force Americans to put money into the stock market. And when you do that, like I said, eventually the sellers go dry, and then you still have these billions of dollars every paycheck cycle that just get funneled in like a machine, and the market goes up.
Interesting. Okay. And SAVE Act, this listener wants to know if you see the SAVE Act as a Trojan horse to trick people into real ID and facial recognition.
Yeah, that's true. I think they want to get us all AI'd out. Get your facial recognition, get any way it's like, and that's the real ID. They tried that. You need to get a real ID. I have a real ID. Get this highfalutin fancy ID. I mean, I traveled internationally last month. I did not even show an ID, a boarding pass, anything.
What?
You walk to the gate and there's a camera and you look at it and it says go. It's all facial recognition now. This was an international flight on Air France. It was the first time ever in my life. They took no boarding pass, asked for no boarding pass. Walk to the gate, camera is there.
Wow.
The stewardess or flight attendant who's watching looks at it. So next time people travel internationally, they probably will see this. Boarding passes are going away. It's all facial recognition now.
Yeah, we're sliding into it for sure. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on. I always enjoy your point of view. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Kate.
melmattison.com. Go follow him on X, Mel Mattison. So it's Mattison. And always appreciate him being willing to come on and being willing to just have a conversation about this, because in this day and age, it's kind of hard to do that, to tell you the truth. It's weird. And I know my point of view is very different. And, I'm getting a lot of these comments. This is kind of funny on the side, on YouTube and so forth. And I'll have my lefties, my total lefties that believe in government and they believe everything they see, and it's always about Trump. And then I have people that clearly are kind of trying to see through the mirage of Trump, because you just have to. You have to be able to look back at all the presidencies and realize what's been going on. And I've said this so many times on the show, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's probably why I share it a lot, because I feel like we're so miraged right now, we don't even realize. One of the things I saw that even further cemented it, although it's not the biggest deal, right? But further cemented it, was Joe Rogan standing there for the EO, okay? For the signing of the executive order. And I was laughing to myself, because the minute I saw Joe Rogan, I'm like, oh, okay. Why would Joe Rogan be standing there? Why would this be happening? So I want to play for you this clip. This is very interesting clip. Okay, this is Joe Rogan explaining why he was there at the White House.
Okay, it's my honor.
This is Trump, President Trump. He's signing. Okay.
And with that, President Trump signing historic legislation, an executive order that will open the pathway for a revolutionary psychedelic drug, ibogaine, to clear a pathway for possible FDA approval. And a room full, Rachel and Charlie, assembled of people that play a part in this. Obviously, HHS Secretary Kennedy and Marty McCary and Jay Bhattacharya. But on the other... Okay, it's my honor.
Oops, for some reason I got that twice. Hold on a second. Here we go. Okay, here we
Tell
go.
everybody how this happened. I sent President Trump some information. We have a gigantic opiate problem in this country, obviously. In 2024, more than 80,000 people died of overdoses. It's a horrible number. And there's more than 5 million people that are addicted to opiates right now in this country. With one dose of ibogaine, more than 80% of people are free of that addiction. With 2 doses, it's more than 90%. I sent him that information. The text message came back, sounds great. Do you want FDA approval? Let's do it. It was literally that quick. These drugs are illegal not because they're harmful. They're illegal because of the 1970 Controlled Substances Act that was passed by the Richard Nixon administration. They did it to target the civil rights movement and the anti-war movement.
Okay, so you're seeing what I'm seeing, right? I hope so. Okay, so Joe Rogan standing behind the president, all right? And even Kennedy isn't standing behind the president. It's actually, I mean, he is, but Joe Rogan's front and center, and Joe Rogan, the podcaster, and basically saying, I sent this to Trump. Trump guaranteed FDA approval because you can, and therefore it is. So for me, what this showed me was the theater is real, my friends, and it's things like this where I have to say, I think this is complete theater and casted. I think that it's very theatrical, if you will. It never stops being theatrical. So, otherwise, why would this be in the news, and why Rogan, and why this? And I don't have anything against Joe Rogan. I just think he's part of the club. It's why he got interviews with the president. You kind of have to be part of the club in order to do that. They vet very, very heavily. And so as it goes with every president, you have a deep state that makes all the direction and orders the positions, and basically is telling them what to do on every issue, and they do it. And then we all argue about the person in the role. So it's kind of how it goes. So I do want to talk just a little bit about health. I thought this was really interesting. Wanted to bring this to the table because I actually really love talking about these kinds of things, because this impacts you and you actually have control over it. You might not have control over the theater, my friends, that's going on right now around the world, but and who plays what part and how they want us to kind of zero in on the parts being played as leaders of the country, because the deep state's really making the moves. You might not have control over that, but you do have control over your diet and over food and over all those things going on. So first of all, I want to bring you to Costco for just a second. Here's a Costco. Here's a clip about Costco blueberry bagels.
Costco's blueberry bagels don't contain a single real blueberry, and most people have never realized this. Big Food basically said, blueberries are too expensive, let's just make one. So instead, they engineered a fake version, a 9-ingredient blueberry made from sugar, corn syrup, hydrogenated oil, and blue dye. 9 ingredients instead of one real berry. Let that sink in, my friend. People eat this every day, and they don't make it obvious so you think it's real. But this is the American food system.
Yeah. Now, if that's true, okay, then don't you wonder how many other things are fake that we're eating? You know, are we eating fake meat? Are we eating fake fruit? Are we eating monstrosities built in laboratories rather than the real deal? So I was thinking about that, and I was remembering back to the mid-90s when Dr. Joel Wallach made some comments about us and about food and about minerals and about all of these things. And so I wanted to bring this to your attention. So this is him talking about his book, Doctors Don't Lie. And he has some really good things to say because, number one, he was a vet. And he compared animals to people and saying, like, we care for our animals in this way and we give them certain minerals, but we don't give these minerals to people. So I know this is a hard pivot from what we were talking about before today, but I did find this pretty compelling. So I wanted to bring this to your attention. So this is a longer clip, but I think you'll like this. Here we go.
And I sat down, I started making a list of possible hobbies, and I looked at doing crossword puzzles. Well, that's good mental exercise, might help me, but didn't help anybody else. And so I went through a whole list of things, trying to find a hobby that would help other people, and I finally settled on collecting obituaries of doctors. Now, as crazy as that sounds, it has a positive value. Because if doctors knew what they were talking about when it comes to health, nutrition, longevity, and that kind of thing, if you separate them out from the general population in America, they should be healthier and live longer, right? If they knew what they were doing. So I did that. I went to the medical library at the medical school at San Diego at La Jolla, at the north end of town, and I spent a week in there going through all these statistics and these surveys that were done on causes of death in doctors and longevity studies and things. What I found out was pretty shocking, Bill. The average lifespan for medical doctors in America is 58. 58. The average lifespan for the average person in America is 75.5. So you can gain 20 years statistically by not going to medical school. And you beg your government to tax you to death so that they can pay Medicare for you. Now, how many of you get 2-cent photocopies from newspapers and scientific articles from your doctors every week or every month showing you positive things you can do from your medical doctors? Isn't it amazing? No hands up. Okay. I'll show you what I give my patients every week and every month so you know what you should be getting. Number one, if you take home nothing more than what I'm going to show you here in the next 3 slides, it will have been worth your coming here tonight. Let's just start out with cancer. It's the number 2 killer of Americans. And of course, the war on cancer was declared in 1971 by Nixon, and Congress agreed that the American government should jump in and deal with this terrible disease. And they committed $23 billion to finding a cure and a vaccine for cancer. And over a period of 24 years, finally they were called up before Congress to give a progress report. They said, okay, what did you do with our $23 billion? What have you done over 24 years? And they said, well, unfortunately, the rate of cancer has gone up in America since 1971 by 18%. And we spent your $23 billion, but we don't have any vaccines or cures. But that's because we were in the wrong position. We weren't positioned right. And what we want now is we want a medical doctor on the president's cabinet. We want him to be called the cancer czar. And we want his office to have $60 million a year so he can fly around the country and tell people it's better to take chemotherapy and radiation so it'll reduce the cancer death rate. Well, I'm glad we have a conservative Congress in there right now because they're going to tell these doctors where to shove that request, because the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and expect a different outcome. Now, we've been doing chemotherapy and radiation for 30 years, and the rate of cancer has gone up 18%. Now, what they say is, well, we've been doing it only during the daytime. Now we want the money so we can try it at night for 23 years. Now, I don't want you to wait for your government, or don't even wait for your doctor to give you permission to do this thing for cancer. If you do this, you start it tonight, and you will save yourself an enormous amount of money and unnecessary misery. This is the real answer for cancer. This study was done by the National Cancer Institute, not the National Enquirer. We're talking about the most highly funded research agency in the world. And they not only get money from Americans, but they get money from governments from all over the world because everybody, in fact, is terrified of cancer. And what they did was go to Henan province, China. They went to Henan province, China, and they chose there to do their study because it has the highest rate of cancer in the whole world. And they took 29,000 people over a period of 5 years between the ages of 40 and 69. They gave them different vitamins and minerals and combinations of vitamins and minerals in little groups to determine if this had any positive effect on reducing the rate of cancer in this place that has the worst cancer rate in the whole world. To make a long story short, when they gave single nutrients, not much happened. Remember, Linus Pauling took 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C every day for 35 years, still died of cancer. And so you shouldn't be too surprised when they gave double the American RDA, which is 120 milligrams of vitamin C every day for 5 years. It didn't affect the rate of cancer. Vitamin A or retinol didn't affect the rate of cancer. Zinc, riboflavin, the trace mineral molybdenum, niacin, none of those things affected the rate of cancer in Henan province. But one group did show significant benefit. This group got 3 nutrients. Even though it was pitifully small doses, just double the American RDA. They got beta-carotene, vitamin E, and the trace mineral selenium every day for 5 years. They showed significant benefit. They reduced the death rate from all causes. Deaths from all causes were reduced by 9%. That included diabetes and stroke and heart disease and cancer and accidents and suicide and so on. They reduced the cancer death rate by 13%. And you just looked at cancer, and the type of cancer that was most common in Henan province, China, stomach and esophageal cancer, they reduced by 21% just by giving 20 cents a day worth of 3 nutrients. You add up 21%, they got better, and 18% we got worse. That's 39% better off they are than we, just simply by taking 20 cents a day worth of 3 nutrients. Any of you get that notice from your doctor or your government? Or okay. So I urge you to do this on your own.
So those 3 were actually beta-carotene, vitamin E, and selenium. And selenium was known to help so that people didn't have the heart disease. And so beta-carotene, vitamin E, and selenium. Now, you guys know I wrote an ebook on cancer because this is an important, almost 15 pages of dialed down what you do if you don't want to do chemo. Go to katetalks.myshopify.com. Kate Talks, like I'm doing right now, katetalks.myshopify.com, and get it ordered. It's 10% off right now. And it's honestly work that's been done over an entire decade or more of research and study and interviews with the best holistic doctors. And is it caused by parasites? Can be, yes. It can be caused by a lot of things, but not, I would never do chemo. So there are so many other ways to tackle it, and you can tackle it. That's the thing. I have to be really careful what I say, or I'll go to YouTube jail again, but you have to be, it's very, very, interesting, these almost 15 pages, because it's very dialed down and it's very, descriptive and informative on what to do. Okay. katetalks.myshopify.com. Also, I wanted to play this for you too, because I did think this was a kind of an interesting clip coming from him. So this is Joel Wallach, Dr. Joel Wallach. Now I'm showing a picture of him in the 90s when he was saying these things, because I thought it was better to show him when he was saying the things that I'm actually playing. So he's a little older these days, but here we go.
Now, in 1957, we learned in animals that we could prevent and cure diabetes with 2 trace minerals. Adult onset diabetes, chromium and vanadium, would prevent and cure it. 10 years ago, 1985, the medical school at the University of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, came out and said the trace mineral vanadium alone could replace insulin for adult onset diabetics.
Yeah.
If you write science
just so you heard that, choline and vanadium are the things that actually help insulin, could actually replace insulin. Here we go.
Now it said the trace mineral vanadium alone could replace insulin for adult onset diabetics. If you write Science Diet dog food in Topeka, Kansas, manufactured by Hill Packing Company, and ask them how many minerals are in Science Diet dog food, they'll proudly write you back and say, well, there's 40 in there, and they always include chromium, vanadium, lithium, and selenium. And then you write checkerboard square, St. Louis, Ralston, Purina, and say, hey, how many minerals are in laboratory rat pellets? Well, we put 28 in there, unless the researcher wants more or less, we can do that. We always include chromium, vanadium, lithium, and selenium. And I'll give anybody in this audience a crisp new $100 bill if you can find me a human infant formula off the shelf of a grocery store or a pharmacy that has more than 12 minerals. None of them contain chromium, vanadium, or lithium, and only one, pro-soybean, the one that has 12, has selenium in it. None of the rest do. And you might have 11 or 10 or 9 minerals in there, depending on which one you choose arbitrarily off the shelf. So our dogs get 40 minerals, our rats get 28, and our own kids get 12 or less. Is it any wonder our society is beginning to crumble?
Interesting. Okay. So great clip. I actually really liked that because he was comparing infant formula to dog food. And I thought, it is very interesting that the animals get X amount of minerals, but we humans are not told to take that same amount. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I also wanted to give you this clip. I thought this was interesting too. Here we go. More from Dr. Joel Wallach. Here we go. Dead doctors don't lie. Here we go.
Now, what are some of the early warning signs of mineral deficiencies? And of course, that's a question I get asked all the time. Farmers know this. You've heard of pica and cribbing. This is where horses and cows will eat the fence rails, and they'll chew on half doors in the barns, and they'll eat the feed box rather than the feed and so forth. Yeah. And they eat dirt and wire and nails and rocks, shingles off of roofs and deer bones and all weird things they're not supposed to eat. And a good husbandman, a good farmer, a good rancher knows those animals are minerally deficient, and they better scoop some minerals to them. Otherwise, they're going to have to rebuild the fence, and the veterinary bills are going to go up, and they'll lose them from hardware disease and all kinds of things. And so we've taken care of that in the animal industry. In human beings, it's a little more complex. Kids kind of act like animals. They go out in the garden and eat dirt. They see it digging in the garden. You see them eating dirt, and they may eat handfuls of sand in a sandbox. They're telling you they're needing some minerals. Many of them will eat that stuff out of kitty litter boxes, not because it tastes good, but because they're seeking things to put in their mouth to try and fill that craving that they have. And of course, mom always picks up the kitty litter box and puts it on the counter where they prepare food. I never figured that one out yet. And then they smack little Frankie on the hand and say, "Now don't do that, dear, it's nasty." And then Frankie can't get the kitty litter box anymore, so he goes over and eats lead-containing caulking from around windows and lead paint, but he's still looking for something to satisfy this need for minerals. Now, adults are a little more complex because we're socialized, and we know if we eat the wooden legs off of furniture or door jambs or stuff like that, they're going to come after you with a butterfly net, right? Frank is losing it. He thinks he's a beaver. He's eating wooden furniture. So we've learned that we can do things that are socially acceptable if we eat chips and dips, and we become Pepsi-holics and chocoholics and sugar-holics, and have to have donuts every morning and eat chocolate and candy and so forth. I hear this all the time. This is one of the reasons why America has a weight problem, because we're minerally deficient. People tend to eat chips and dips and Pepsis and donuts and chocolate and things when they really are craving minerals. Of course, we already talked about the gray hair. Another deficiency symptom, an early warning, is age spots or liver spots in your hands. That is, in fact, a selenium deficiency for people who are taking in a lot of vegetable oils.
Interesting, right? Okay. And he mentioned gray hair because he was talking about copper. And that's my final clip I wanted to play for you. This was very interesting as well. I've talked a lot about copper on the show because I think it's at the root of a lot of diseases, actually, as a deficiency. Because if you really look at copper and what it does, this is why I take Recuperate Copper. I take Recuperate Copper from formulaiq.com because Recuperate Copper is mixed with a couple other things like beef liver, which is like high in B12 and things. But the formula itself really assimilates into the body, and you are going to actually absorb the product you're given. So a lot of products that you get over the counter, you're basically just peeing out. So, but this one you're not. Recuperate Copper, you can actually feel the effects of it right away, which is really kind of nice, right? Yeah, that's what you want from a product. You want to be able to start feeling the difference. So he's talking about copper here. So pay attention to this. I thought this was really interesting. This is Dr. Joel Wallach. Here we go.
Dr. Stuart Cartwright here, age 38, dropped dead in his home in San Diego from a ruptured coronary aneurysm, a swelling or a ballooning of the artery in the heart. And of course, a aneurysm is a breakdown of the elastic fibers in the artery, and you get a ballooning in that weakened area, much like a car or truck tire. When you hit a chuck hole and you break the cords and you get a ballooning of that area, it's very weak and will blow. I always say that Dr. Stuart Cartwright here died of something even a turkey wouldn't die from, because 1957, we learned from a turkey study what causes aneurysms. The USDA felt that they knew enough about turkey nutrition at that time. They were able to take turkeys off of the range and put them on concrete or wire, and they built this pellet to do that. And in the first 13 weeks in this pilot project where they had 250,000 turkeys on it, the first 13 weeks, farmers were out there every morning picking them up by the bushel baskets full, taking them to the state diagnostic lab to see what they died from. When they opened them up for the autopsy, every one of them, 125,000 of them, had died of a ruptured aortic aneurysm. And one of the clever pathologists says, that's got to be due to a copper deficiency, because copper is required to manufacture elastic fibers and also maintain the strength in arteries and skin and other tissues in the body. So they doubled the amount of copper in there. The next year they tried to raise 500,000 turkeys, and not a single one of those turkeys died from a ruptured aneurysm. They went from a 50% loss to a 0 loss just simply by doubling the amount of copper in there. They got very excited about this, and they started studying copper deficiency diseases in humans and variety of species of animals. Again, to make a long story short, what they found out was this: the first symptom of a copper deficiency in human beings is white, gray, or silver hair. Even in the dark, I see a lot of copper deficiency in this room.
Interesting, right? Okay.
The medical profession.
Oh, for some reason, it's being wonky.
And if you don't...
Sorry about this. I don't know why it's being wonky. Okay, hold on a second.
And if you don't take this warning, if you don't heed this warning from your body and don't start supplementing with some colloidal copper, what happens is you begin to get a breakdown of the elastic fibers in your skin, and you get crow's feet around the corners of your eyes and the corners of your mouth. Parts of your anatomy begin to sag, and you're in trouble when you go to your doctor for a physical and he says, I've got a golf buddy, being a colleague down the hall here who's a plastic surgeon, and for $10,000 he'll make you look 20 years younger. He can give you a facelift, a booby lift, a tummy tuck, a derriere lift, and you don't need any of that surgery. Really, all you need is some colloidal copper, and everything will come back up like you have a hydraulic jack under it.
I love that. See, I don't think things are as complicated as they seem, and our medical system sure has made it so, right? So last Thursday I did a show and talking about a lot of these things and saying, like, look, we have so many problems in understanding our health that it's really actually kind of fun to do a show these days on, look, this is what causes this, And so he was saying aneurysms are caused by lack of copper, and that heart attacks are caused by lack of selenium. And that there are certain minerals that we just have to have in our system. I do drink Cardio Miracle, cardiomiracle.com/Kate. You can get a discount if you use cardiomiracle.com/Kate. And the reason I take Cardio Miracle too is because it has a lot of these essentials in it, and it's easy to drink. And I take 2 doses instead of 1. That was key. But also because of the vitamin mineral load that you're taking in is so good for you. So I'm really going to encourage you to do that. Try it out. And I really like the effects of it. I also like the effects of, I take beef liver, and I also, on top of it, take Recuperate Copper daily, because I love knowing that many of the diseases that are caused by lack of copper, maybe I can not have to entertain in my life. So there you go. I'm saying this because we don't understand the origin. And these days, too many doctors are saying, we just don't know why. We just don't get it. We don't understand why you have this. The other big thing, and he mentioned this too, way back then, is to say that everything is genetic. And I don't think it is. And neither does Joel Wallach. It's not as genetic as you think. So whenever they want to pawn off an excuse in the medical community onto getting you to believe that you got this thing from just your genes, right? It's much easier to say it's genetic. Number one, and I exposed that on another show where I talked about why and how they do that, how they say it's genetic, or you're of a certain descent, so you get XYZ, right? Is because they know that if you think it's genetic, you'll stop looking for an answer because you can't control your genetics, right? Just can't control it. So all I'm saying is I would never buy that lie. Maybe somewhere, maybe 1 or 2 things are genetic, but I would never buy the lie that so many things are genetic, and that in 2026, the doctors just don't know, because I think that's a lie. Straight up lie. And so just taking that into account, I just think there are so many things like this, and I'll always bring them to your attention, because health is the one thing that you can control. It is the one thing that you can totally control, because you can grow your food, you can get it from local farmers, you can control the supplementation because we're not getting things in our soil now anymore. You can control the outcomes, and you can control the knowledge. So if you're willing to look, that is. So that's why I love talking about health on the show, is because, and I'll never stop, is because I love the fact that we can understand these things and understand what to do and what deficiency might be causing them too. can be caused by parasites. Yes, I think parasites and bacteria are about the only things that we can be looking at besides mineral deficiency. But I actually think people would be very shocked to know how much mineral deficiency causes disease, because it's huge. So on that cheery note, I will be back tomorrow. By the way, I have the Green Smoothie Girl Robin open shot on the show on Thursday. So we're gonna be covering the draft. We're gonna be covering a lot of things on Thursday. So you're gonna want to join me for that show as well. I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you for joining me. Really appreciate you guys. Be faithful, be fearless. Go to katedalleyradio.com for all the links of the things I talk about and that I take personally. And go get the cancer ebook for yourself and for a friend or for a family member. katetalks.myshopify.com. Appreciate you guys. Thank you. katedalleyradio.com for more info.